Check, check. Check, check. All right. I'll take over. Have we made it? Is it time to start? Good morning. Good morning. I'm Tony Farrar from the Mechanical Engineering Department. I am super thrilled about how the football game turned out last night. And I am super thrilled that you are here with us this morning. Thank you for coming. I know it probably was more difficult today than others, if not for everything that happened last night, for the fact that our roof seems to be leaking in several places. If you happen to be sitting under a water spout, move. Problem-solving class right there. We're going to have a special day today that's going to be very helpful for you. That's my goal. But one of the things that I'm going to do that's going to be helpful for you is invite you, before you leave, at the end of class, to come visit me up front with your ID. If you don't have it, that's okay. We'll get it anyway. I'm going to take attendance, and I'm going to add 1% to the final grade of every single person in this class. So, you got to stay till the end, but then we'll do that, and it'll be fun. So today's topic is pseudocode, which is an idea that I think kind of fell through the cracks that's actually fairly important, and I think will help you a lot. And so I'm going to show you how that works, but first a few friendly reminders. First off, today is a fairly significant deadline. We're actually ending our first module today. JavaScript, you should be done with it tonight, and moving on this week to Python. And so as you wrap up your JavaScript and are wondering what to do next, head on over to Canvas and get started on the Python modules. What I suggest you do there is the same thing that we suggested you do with JavaScript. Pick Lynda or Codecademy and start working through them. And as you come across the topics that are listed in the core skills activities, you can press pause on one and move over and solve our problems and then resume. The people that are finding the coding to be the least challenging are the ones who are completing one of these two things along with our code, rather than just trying to sit down and work our problems. That's the way the class was designed, so I guess that means it's working. Number two, we are getting closer and closer to starting your group projects. We have a few weeks left until you're actually going to have to be committed to a project and start working down the path of getting yourselves ready to solve it in the particular platform that you're interested in. And so today what I'd like to invite you to start rattling around in your brain are, what are the problems, what are the human problems that your group is interested in? As engineers, it's really tempting for us to move into solution mode too quickly. And so if words like an app that comes out of your mouth, you're looking at the solution rather than the problem. We don't want to talk about an app that fixes the issue with the trains being late. We want to talk about the problem, which is people want to get to and from where they're going in a timely manner. Okay? So we're backing out, we're starting light. This is why we've had the entrepreneurship folks coming in. And then this coming Wednesday, what we're going to do is actually begin the first assignment for the projects. And so we're going to start that activity in class. It's going to carry on beyond there. So Wednesday is going to be a pretty critical experience where we're going to get you guys ready to identify these problems and work through the process of down selecting to the one that you're going to solve. And about 2.5 weeks from now, you're going to be committed to the project that your company is going to work on for the rest of the semester. So, come ready to do that. Any questions? Silence, crickets. Okay. Checking with the people in the back row. Is this readable? All right. For your viewing pleasure, I would like to welcome one of our own to give a guest talk today. Nick White has been a TA on this class since we started it last semester. And his experiences in group code in particular these last few weeks have put him in a place where he's really aware of where you're at. Feels very close there. And so he's going to actually talk to you today about pseudocode, which is a strategy that we use for planning our solutions before we actually start the process of writing code. So I guess that's enough of an introduction. We've got to hand off a couple of mics and things here, and then Nick will take over. So thanks, everybody. And so those are there, and these clip on medium height. Jam them in your pocket, and off
I don't have the vest, though. So I don't have the vest, though. Can you hear me? Working? All right, guys. Like Dr. Farrar said, my name's Nick White. First and foremost, go Eagles. Secondly, today I'm going to be talking to you about loops. We identified that a lot of people kind of know what they're doing with loops, but don't really know. So I'm going to go over the third HackerRank question from our loop, JavaScript loop question set. So first and foremost, the problem statement of that was find all the prime numbers, or the prime factors of any number between 2 and 100. So first and foremost, what is a prime number? Anybody? Fantastic. Number that's divisible by itself and 1. So, secondly, what's a factor? Easy stuff here, guys. Go ahead, one more time. Gotcha. So it's a number that is divisible evenly by another number. So how are we going to figure that out? How do we figure out whether a number is evenly divisible in code? If you've been working on the HackerRanks, you already should know this. Over there. What's up? Modulus. All right. So what's the, in JavaScript in particular, what's the symbol for modulus? Percent sign. All right, cool. So we're going to take any number. We're going to take a number called num first and see if it is evenly divisible by any number. And this is pseudocode. This is obviously the syntax is incorrect. So what's the modulus give us? What's that?
The remainder.
The remainder, fantastic. So what do we want the remainder to equal if it's evenly divisible? 0, fantastic, look at that. All right, so if I run this code, aside from the syntax, if I run this code, it's only going to check one number. So how do we get it to check every single number that's between a number that I give? All the way in the back. Set a variable equal to 1 and have it increase. How are we going to have it increase, though? Okay. How are we going to keep it from increasing, though? Or sorry, not keep it from you. Keep it increasing. Over here. What's that? Set a loop for it. All right, fantastic. So what kind of loop are we going to use? A for loop. How does that work? Explain that to me. All right. For this, we're going to use I for the variable. Everybody cool with that? Anybody object to I? Fantastic. No strong feelings about I. All right, semicolon. All right, where do we want the loop to stop? To 100? What if my number is not 100? All the way in the back. Say again a little bit louder. 1 over what? (101). What? Well, again, we're checking a specific number. So what if that number is 8? Go ahead. Num. Fantastic. So I is less than num. And then what's the final part of a for loop? Back to you. You were doing a good job. How you want to increase or decrease. And going back to what you said, we're going to use I++. What does this I++ actually do? Adds 1. All right, fantastic. Okay, so now, and inside that, we're going to put we're going to check num I equals 0. So what am I missing? Right now I just have something that says the modulus of I is equal to 0. Well, yep, first off, the syntax, if I'm working in JavaScript, the syntax is incorrect for checking. So I need 2 equal signs. Secondly, all I'm doing is just saying that this num is equal to 0. Return something, all right. Getting a little ahead there, but that's fine. So we're going to print, since we're trying to figure out what are we printing? Printing I, all right, fantastic. But right now we're still missing something in front of the checking statement. How do I know when I want to print? Fantastic. So I'm missing an if statement. All right. So right now, this is going to check. What's this going to give me? It's going to give me, well, it's going to give me integers, but it's going to give me everything that's a factor. What I'm looking for is prime factors. So one thing we can do is we know that the largest factor of any number is its square root, correct? Just nod and say yes, because that's true. So we can cut our loop in half by saying that we want I to only go between the square root of a number. Alrighty. Also, what's wrong with my starting point? Should be 1. All right. Because if you try to divide by 0, you break the universe, and there's black holes everywhere. Bad things happen. Alrighty. So now we have it checking every number between its midway point. Go ahead. It should start at 2 because exactly. Because 1 is a prime factor, and that it's redundant to print 1. 2 is going to be the lowest prime factor. Alrighty. So how do we make sure that this is printing only prime numbers, though? There is not a function. Let's assume there isn't a function. Some languages might have it, some languages won't. So we're writing our own function for that. So if we want to check to see that every single number is a square root, we know that we need to decrease num. Because if we want to check every other number, as we're decreasing, if we divide number by I, we're going to decrease it and make sure that we're not returning some larger factor. Because if it's larger, let me collect my thoughts for a second. If it's something that is larger than the prime factor, by dividing it, we're reducing it and making sure that nothing larger can go into it. I feel like I didn't explain that correctly, but you kind of get what I'm saying. So what we're going to do is continue with this for loop. How are we going to change the value of number? Say again louder, man. I have people coughing. All right, why are we doing that? Sorry, it's hard for me to hear you.
That's how you change variables in JavaScript.
That is how you change, well, not just in JavaScript, in multiple languages, that's how you change variables. And this is one thing I've noticed a lot, is when you're storing the value of a variable, you're allowed to use the same variable. It's going to overwrite it once you go through this operation. So don't be afraid to say number is equal to number plus something else. That's how you actually change the variable and keep iterating through this stuff. So now that I have this, if I run this way, it's only going to give me the prime factors, but it's also only going to give me the specific prime factors. If I run this, let's say for 5, it's only going to give me, or sorry, not 5. If I run this for 25, it's only going to give me 5. Which, yes, that is a prime factor, but we want every single prime factor. 5 is actually 5 times 5, right? So how do I get that to happen? How do I check every single factor is actually a prime and print out each one? Some of you have, a majority of you guys have actually done this in HackerRank, so you should hopefully remember a little bit of it. I'll give you a hint. The name of this question is nested loops. All right, what kind of loop are we using this time then? We're not using a for loop this time, only because a for loop gives you a starting point and an ending point and an operation to do. We just want this to check while something is true. So what kind of loop would you use? While loop, fantastic. So we put a while loop. Why is that though? Can someone explain to me why we're using a while loop? Go ahead. Correct. So what this is going to do is once it runs through the while loop, it is going to check and see if that's true, and then it's going to divide it again. The way to look at this is if the number is divisible by I evenly, it's going to break it down in half and give you that same factor. And one thing I didn't think about is if I could run this through HackerRank, I had a code that actually prints out the iterations, but planning, didn't happen for that. So I apologize. But basically, this is our complete code. The only thing we need to do at this point is correct it for syntax, which, let's say we're using JavaScript since that's what we've been working in. What's wrong with my syntax so far? There's a whole bunch, so feel free. Preferably not the team leads, as much as I appreciate that. Seems like you know something. What's up? So what should I use instead of print? All right, I'll let you think about that. Anybody else? Go ahead. All right, why do I not want to use return? That will give me a result, but what's wrong with that? It ends the loop, exactly. And if I want to keep looping, I can't return because then I'm just going to run it once. What's that? Console.log. Fantastic. And console log requires parentheses. What else? What else is wrong? Go ahead. What's that? Fantastic, yep. All right, what else? Not team leads. Speak up, man. It's hard for me to hear you down here. I sure did, yep. I'm an engineer. I'm not a speller. Behind you. All the way in the corner. What's up? No, you. Yep. Yep. Squiggly brackets. All right. Don't use technical jargon or anything. We got curly brackets, squiggly brackets, whatever you want to call them. Is that all? That's all the squiggly brackets I need? How many? Where else? Alrighty, I'm hearing it at the end of the while, and that tells us, and if you come to me for help and your code looks like this, I'll be upset because I like indentations, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. Just make your code look neater. What's up? Initialize the variable. So in JavaScript, you need to actually, and in other languages, you need to designate what this is. We're going to call it var I. And what else? There's a big glaring one. What? Oh, sure. Let's assume all of those lines aren't part of the code, starting from the for loop. True, except if this is a function, you're correct, but if this is a function, num is going to be designated already as our input. So yeah, yes and no. You actually don't need semicolons. It's a good habit, but you don't need them. What's that? Yeah, let's assume that's there. You're correct. What's that? No, again, just starting at the for loop. Go ahead. Square rooting, yeah. So what should I have in front of that? Yep. And math calls, lets JavaScript do a bunch of math options. Sorry to be so technical on that, but that's how it works. And that pretty much does our entire code. I think I'm not missing any syntax. I didn't make any more syntax errors. But that's okay. If I did, you can make fun of me for it later. And that's basically how you walk through the loops. What's up? Yes. If you run this through HackerRank, that will get you I believe. Sure. So how this is only giving us primes is, I'll do what I ask you guys to do all the time. I'll walk you through what it's doing. So we got this for loop that it's going to start. It has a counting variable called I. It's going to start at 2. And then it's going to loop through as long as I is less than the square root of the number. The square root makes sure that we're taking half of the number, or the largest factor that we can. Then we're checking to see if I is a factor of num. If it is, we print I. Remember, I is starting from 2, so we're checking the smallest value. As soon as if it's something that goes in evenly, we're going to divide number by I because we already know it's a factor. That's going to decrease it again. And this is inside the while loop still. It's going to decrease it again, and then it's going to check. And if it's evenly divisible again, it prints that out. So if we're starting at 2, it's going to give you 2 2s. And then it's going to keep counting up. And every time that it hits something that is evenly divisible, it's going to print that out. So we're starting from the lowest number and counting up. Eventually, we're going to get num down small enough that it's no longer divisible by anything larger than primes. Does that make sense? Okay, come see me during group code, and we can. What do you mean?
Run it for 25. Num is 25.
Okay. So if, let's say, num equals 25. So I equals 2. So first things first, it's going to take the square root of number, which the square root of number is 5, and then it's going to check if 5 is evenly divisible by 2, which it's not. So then it's going to go through again. I now equals 3. Is 5 divisible by 3? It's not. Is 5 divisible by 4? No. Is 5 divisible by 5? Yes. And it prints out 5. Make sense? I'm getting half yes, half no. So if it doesn't make sense, come find us at group code. I can walk you through it a lot. I can take as much time as you need to get through it. Any other questions about this function in particular, or loops, specifically the difference between for or while? Fantastic. So the next one we're going to go over is what you guys worked on Friday, the code sprint. This one I thought was interesting. I'm sure I heard a lot of similar feelings, maybe not in the same vernacular, but one of the biggest issues that I noticed from code sprint is people don't really understand how arrays work inside of coding. So first and foremost, how does an array work? What is an array? Set of numbers, all right. But more specifically, what is an array? Not exactly. I think you're getting close to it. All the way in the back. It's a variable in which data is stored. Yes, but more specifically, an array is a set of numbers. It can be just a single line array. It can be, like you guys worked on the code sprint, it can be a 3x3 matrix array, which means that there are 3 numbers in the first row, 3 numbers in the second row, 3 numbers in the third row. Kind of like a grid. So kind of what you were talking about with the grid stuff. So the problem statement for this one was, given a certain number by certain number grid, we need to be able to take 3 matrices of the same size and average them out to give us another image. What's up? They can, yeah. Arrays are they can have strings, they can have numbers, they can have individual letters, as long as you just have data stored in individual areas of that array. So yeah, good point. Thank you. All right, so first and foremost, we need to take an average of every number in this array. So I'm not going to insult your intelligence. I assume that you guys know how to take an average of something. How do we I just gave the answer. How do we access individual parts of an array? Index. Thank you. Someone knows the answer right after I say it. So how does an index work? You've answered a lot of questions, man. I appreciate it. All the way in the back. Say a little louder. All right, yeah. It tells you the location of something in the array. So if we're dealing with a 2D array, a 3x3 matrix, how many indices does a certain number have? Go ahead. 2. Fantastic. So you can look at it kind of like an XY grid. It's the first number is your X position, second, or your column, your row. The second number is your Y position or your column. So since we had a bunch of 3x3, well, actually, it wasn't just 3x3. We had a couple arrays that were a certain number. So we just need to take the average of those arrays. One way we could do this is just by writing each individual array, R image 0, 0 plus G image 0, 0 plus B image 0, 0. But obviously, you don't want to hear me, first off, you don't want to hear me saying that several times in a row. Secondly, you don't want to type that, especially if our array becomes large, like a 100 by 100 array. So how, again, going back to what we just talked about, how would we make that easier? Anybody? A loop, fantastic. So we're going to write another for loop. So for So how do, excuse me, for, we're going to start at I, obviously, because I is our index. When do we want this to stop? How do we know when to stop? All the way in back. Length of the array. All right, cool. So as long as I is less than the length of the array. And then we're going to increase this by 1 again. And then again, this is one of the things, the benefits of pseudocode. I'm just going to write check or create the average. All right. So we have it. We have it checking the arrays, or the individual values of the arrays, and making an average. We kind of skipped a step, though. What's the first thing we should check? Can we make an average if the arrays are the same size? Or, sorry, not the same size. No, fantastic. So what do we want to do first and foremost? Go ahead. Compare the length of the 3 arrays. Fantastic, I like it. So we're going to use an if statement. And all right. Again, pseudocode. The syntax is obviously terrible. That's fine. We're just trying to get a rough idea of where we're going in our code. Else, first you need to spell else correctly. Secondly, so now we're going through and creating an average. That's fantastic. And then where are we putting these? What's up? Stored in a variable. All right. Create average of numbers. Yeah. And put in variable. I cannot spell today. Cool. So this is a 3x3 pixel image. What's some of the value, or what of the properties of the RGB scale? Can I have a value of 265? Zero and 255. Fantastic. So we need to check inside of this for loop. We need to check that the values are in scale. So what do we want to do, Rob? What do we want to do if the value is above 255? Go ahead. Set it to 255. Fantastic. So if greater than 255, set to 255. What do we want to do if it's less than 0 or negative? Set it to 0. Fantastic. If less than 0, set to 0. All right. So one of the what's going to happen when we make an average, though? Chances are these aren't going to all average up evenly. So how would I go? What do I need to do to make sure it's not decimal points? Simple math. Round. Fantastic. So let's see. Create rounded average of 3 numbers. Put into the variable. All right. So let's look at how. Am I missing anything? Yes. What am I missing from the pseudo? I'm making this matrix. That's all well and good. I am missing another for loop. Correct. Why do I need 2 for loops? That is exactly why it is. So since there are 2 dimensions to the array, I use I and j, but as Nick mentioned on Friday, it might help you to use row or column just to designate so you don't confuse yourself with the I and j. So as long as j is less than the length of the array. So which array length are we using? Does it matter? Why doesn't it matter? Who said no? They're all the same length, correct. That's what our if statement that's printing wrong is doing for us. We already checked that they're all the same length, so you can use either your R matrix, your G matrix, or your B matrix. So, how are we actually accessing these? We already mentioned that we're using the indexes. How does that look in most coding languages? Not most, a lot of coding languages. Go ahead, all the way in the back. All right, let's just say our image, just so you can see it. Square brackets, so I, J. And so that's what it looks like. Explain to me how this is going through each section of the array.
First, it goes row by row. So the first for loop goes into the first row, and then inside that, it then goes down the whole column. And then once it's completed the column, go back into the next column or the next row. So the inner for loop will go completely through, and then the outer for loop will complete.
Fantastic. All right. So for anybody who didn't hear what he said, the first for loop designates your row. So we're going to start at row 0, and then we're going to go across through each column. That second for loop is going to run through each column, every value of the rows. Or sorry, other way around. That's going to go through every row in that column. So why am I starting at 0 instead of 1? Computer starts counting at 0, correct. So the 0 index is actually the first place in your array. Keep that in mind. I get it confused still constantly. You're going to have to wrestle with that over and over again. So this is basically the pseudo for creating this. Let's try and jam this into JavaScript syntax then. So how do I find the length of an array in JavaScript? What's up? Name of the array dot length. Fantastic. Let's just say our image dot length. And yes, I am missing squiggly brackets. And this is when you can actually get away with not using these, but this is when it actually behooves you to use them, because when you start nesting loops inside of if statements, inside of other statements, not only will it confuse you or the TA who's trying to help you, it'll also confuse the program sometimes. All right, so our image, create an average of the rounded number. So how are we doing that? Oops. Anybody? And obviously not adding them together, but how are we doing the rounding? Go ahead. Math.round. Our friend Math is coming back. And again, that is just telling us that whatever value we get in here is going to be the rounding. What if I wanted it to round down or round up? What else would I use instead? Go ahead. Floor or ceiling. All right. Well, we may or may not throw that kind of question at you, so keep that in mind. What else am I missing? What's the final step of this outside of syntax? Because I don't think you guys want to watch me sit here and change this into syntax. What's that? You have to return it. Fantastic. We did all of this fun stuff, and we never actually went anywhere with it. That is not how you spell return. There we go. Let's just call this the gray image. All right. With each of these if statements, we do have to make sure that we repeat it for each individual array. Luckily, we can just copy and paste once we get the first two done. This is basically the pseudo that'll help you, or not help you. This pseudo will get you through once you actually paste it or apply the correct syntax to it. Pseudo is really helpful in actually getting your thought process going, especially get out a piece of paper, write down what you're trying to do. Some of you who I've helped in group code have seen me do that. I'll say I need a piece of paper because I can't run code through my head. I wish I could. I'm not a computer though. Does anybody have any questions about pseudocode? That's pretty much all I had for it. I know. Thank you guys for actually showing up. I know it was rough, especially after the Super Bowl, and I appreciate you guys listening to me.
I'm going to show you one last little thing that he made me think of, and then we can real quick scan some attendance and give you guys some extra credit. If you didn't hear me, everybody who's here is getting 1 point added to their final average for the course. So thanks a lot for coming, and go Eagles. I would like to just real quick point out these 2 lines here. When it comes to loops and using them to access arrays in particular, this is the part that always confuses me. And so I want to show you what this is doing, because this is how I would actually write this code. A lot of times I don't know if I'm going to need a loop or not until I'm actually in it. And so I like to start with as simple as possible. So let's just, for a second here, get ourselves a blank screen. And let's pretend that we have a 3x3 array, and we're just going to call it, I don't know, image. Okay? I guess we need, how about this? We'll call it our gray image. Okay? So this is a 3x3 array. And what we're trying to do is go through the red, green, and blue and average them cell by cell. And so what I want to do is something that looks like gimage of 0, 0 equals some math, right? I want to take some values, average them, stick them in to gimage 0, 0. Then I want to do it for 0, 1, and then I want to do it for 0, 2, right? And then I want to do it for 1, 0, 1, 1, and 1, 2, and a third time for 2, 0, 2, 1, and 2, 2. Now clearly this would be very impractical for a 100 by 100 to copy and paste it, but what it lets me see is that we have a pattern, right? On the right-hand side, we have a number that keeps running 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. And on the left-hand side, we have that another index that's going 0 for a while, 1 for a while, and 2 for a while. That's the effect of having these things nested. If I say for I equals 0 to 2, what that does is it goes 0, 1, 2. But how many times I want to do that gives me my second one, 2, 2, like so. And so all of that code could be replaced with gimage of I, j, like so. Right? Because I is going to equal 0, and then we hit the j loop, which goes from 0 to 2. Then we pop back out to the main loop, so now I is equal to 1, whoop, and 0 to 2 for j a second time, and so on. And so a lot of times when I'm working these problems, I actually type it out for a small one just to look for the pattern and where the indices are going. All right, so one more time, I'd like to say thanks again, and go Eagles. Give me half a second to set up my little card scanner thing, and then you guys can come on up. Have a great day. Wednesday, come ready to argue about some issues.